Recognize the member Timberlea Prospect.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, Mr. Speaker, as you well know, I'm the proud father of a daughter who attends NASCAD, and so I'd like to table for the attention of the House a photo of this young woman, my daughter Jana, as she is leading a protest about the 4% tuition increase that has unfortunately taken place at the university where she's attending. And that demonstration, Mr. Speaker, in which my daughter Jana was involved, was reflecting the fact that the students across this province in post-secondary institutions are not happy with tuitions. Now, the minister or the acting minister or the members opposite can stand in their place and they can attempt to put a good spin on this. But I want you to know the bottom line is that young men and women that attend post-secondary institutions across this province are not happy with this government. They are not pleased with this government, and the good reason that they are not pleased with this government are the tuitions that they and their parents have to face. And I want members opposite to answer this question. I want them to think about it. What does a food bank have to do with a university? Should food banks be operating at universities? And let me tell you, that is a shameful disgrace that the Nova Scotia College of Art and Design, just down the street here, has a food bank on its campus to assist with students, to help young men and women out as they are studying, as they are holding down part-time jobs, and eventually, with graduation, hopefully, they face the debt which they and their parents have assumed on this topic. So let me tell you, when it comes to tuition fees, you're talking to the father of a daughter who is well aware of the difficulties that we've been facing across this province. Now, members opposite should be aware of the fact that it's just not NASCAD that has faced recent increases. There were Dalhousie, there were Dalhousie University students here, Dalhousie University student leaders here today who expressed to us their concern about tuitions and how they continue to just escalate. We've heard of the increases at St. Mary's. We have heard of the increases at other universities in this province. And the most shameful thing is that recently, the other day, excuse me, Mr. Speaker, the other day, I was given some information by a member of the education community who said to me, you should tell community college students, Bill, to hang on to their wallets because they're next. Their tuitions are going to increase. Mr. Speaker, I had the privilege of working in schools where I, as a school teacher, could advise young men and women about career plans, what they should be looking at, various institutions that they should be considering. And I was proud to hear the Premier, the acting Minister of Education today, and the Minister of Education at the time make announcements about the importance of the community college system across this province. I've had the opportunity to meet and have conversations at length with Ray Ivany as a real mover and shaker in the education community about the importance of community colleges across this province. That's a key thing. Many young men and women are making decisions by going to community colleges that are close to the communities that they live in, close to the communities they went to high school in, because they do not have the added costs of residence, they do not have the added cost of rentals or apartments by coming to some of the university towns. And Mr. Speaker, as you probably are aware, there are young men and women with degrees from universities that have gone back to community college because of the career-oriented process that the instructors in those post-secondary institutions bring to these young men and women's attention. And I want to make very clear that the acting minister, if he's participating in this debate, is aware of the master plan from community colleges. And I heard his comments during question period. I want to put them in perspective. When you look at the fact that this master plan for community colleges, and I will be tabling this for your interest, Mr. Speaker, it says tuition fees at colleges for core full-time programs are currently $21.50. They will increase by $100 to 2003 and 4. The final year of a 3-year program of gradual increase. Here's the key thing. There are no planned increases in tuition in subsequent years as the college's tuition fees are among the top third of community colleges in Canada. That was in writing in the master plan approved by the board of directors of the community colleges of this province. That says it in writing that there were to be no more tuition increases. We have heard of the talk about new campuses. We have heard of the improvements that are taking place and important changes that are taking place, Mr. Speaker, at our community colleges. But while those changes were taking place, whether it was a formal memorandum of agreement, whether it was a gentleman's agreement, whether it was an understanding written on paper or not, these changes were going to take place in the community college systems across this province. And during that time, there were to be no tuition increases. And what did we learn yesterday? We learned that a decision is being made that will be brought forward to the cabinet that it is necessary to have tuition increases. And you know, I've heard from members of the journalist profession, I've heard from other people who have university degrees, $2,250 to $2,600. It's still cheaper than universities. That's not the point, Mr. Speaker. We're talking about a 15% increase over that time period. And when you have young men and women who, let's face it, for career reasons, can't go to university, a lot of them because of financial reasons, and when they're looking at the fact that they're holding down a part-time job and they're trying to help out their parents with tuition, and you realize tuition has gone up at the community college level this time. That is hurting young men and women, and it is hurting them desperately. Community college students are not pleased. In fact, they will be in this legislature at some time to make sure that the Minister of Education and the Premier is aware of the fact that tuitions just cannot be allowed to be continued to increase year after year after year. Now, I had the opportunity to meet with the presidents of the various universities. And the passing on of costs to tuition and passing it on to students through tuition is just the way it's been happening these days. You know, they are taking care of maintenance, and they're taking care of programs, and they're taking care of their difficulties because perhaps the corporations aren't lining up to a system like they used to, so we'll pass it on to the students. Well, let me tell you, the students have had enough. And I am proud to say that this young woman who is in this picture says to me with regularity,
Order, please.
make sure
Order, please. No member knows, no props.
that I've
No
tabled.
member Timberley Prospect has about 15 seconds.
Well, I'll tell you, Mr. Speaker, thank you for that correction. I'm proud to say that my daughter is not going to take this. Other university students are not going to take this. And this government is going to wear this.
Thank you. The Honourable the Acting Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'm pleased to be able to speak on behalf of my colleague, the Honourable Minister of Education. I've been around the Cabinet table now for almost 5 years, and there have been many discussions with respect to education, and I've been very pleased to be part of those discussions. And they are passionate, Mr. Speaker. Everyone around the table cares deeply about the education of young Nova Scotians, and the decisions we make are often difficult, and they are never made lightly. Contrary to the suggestions of the honourable member opposite, this government has been making and will continue to make every effort it can afford to support students as they pursue post-secondary education. First, we invest more and more every year in our public schools so that young Nova Scotians are well prepared to enter university or college programs. We also continue to restore funding to universities. Mr. Speaker, and I say restore funding to universities because this funding was severely cut by the previous government. University operating funding was at an all-time high in 1993 at $212 million. It was cut all the way down to $175 million in 1997. With our continuous investment, we've been able to bring university funding close to its peak of 1993, and we will continue to invest more. Mr. Speaker, we don't control what universities do with this funding. They are autonomous institutions. They control their finances, and they set their own tuition. We understand that universities face rising costs, but we expect them to seek every alternative to meet them and not meet them simply by increasing students' tuition. We do recognize that there's one way we can help universities to do this. Knowing what funding will be available in the future will help them to do a better job of planning to keep tuition increases to a minimum. And we're currently discussing a multi-year funding agreement with universities. We aim to give universities a 3-year guarantee for their operating funding. In return, we're discussing such things as reducing duplication, making it easier to transfer credits between universities and the community colleges, identifying and supporting programs in areas that address Nova Scotia's skill needs, and of course, keeping tuition increases to a minimum. Mr. Speaker, our government does not regulate tuition, nor should we. Regulating tuition doesn't work. Other provinces have tried it through tuition freezes, and there have been disastrous results. While the government imposed a tuition freeze, the quality of education in British Columbia, for instance, in those universities began to deteriorate. It's a fact of life that costs rise, and the universities simply can't afford to maintain quality programs. When the freeze was lifted, tuition went through the roof as universities desperately tried to repair the damage done to their programs and services during the freeze. Some say the approach should be a fully funded tuition freeze. Mr. Speaker, that doesn't work either. They're trying to do that in Ontario right now. The government just announced $48 million in funding because it's not allowing universities to increase tuition. The universities are saying it's not enough. That's the risk of a fully funded tuition freeze. No matter how much funding we provide, the universities would never say that that is enough. They would always want more. At a minimum, a fully funded tuition freeze in Nova Scotia would cost $14 million, and that's just for 1 year. The universities would essentially ask the government to write a blank check. We simply can't afford to do that. As I said, Mr. Speaker, our approach is to continue investing in universities as we can afford to. We'll continue working with them on keeping tuition increases to a minimum and providing stable funding. We're also working on a proposal to the federal government to help universities address the cost of maintaining their buildings. We've already taken a huge step in terms of facilities for the community colleges. We're investing $123 million in the college's facilities. Mr. Speaker, this investment in post-secondary education is the biggest in Nova Scotia's history. The college currently gets twice as many applications as it has seats available. This expansion will increase the college's capacity by 2,500 seats so more students can access the education and training they need to get the jobs they want. Our provincial operating funding to the college has been steadily rising. It's currently at nearly $68 million. Earlier today, the honourable member for Timberlea Prospect tried to paint a picture of college students who are paying the highest fees in the country and getting the lowest per capita funding from their school. And I have two short words for him, Mr. Speaker. He's wrong. Nova Scotia's community college tuition is the fourth lowest in the country. PEI has the highest fees at $3,250, $1,000 higher than Nova Scotia. Our community college gets the fourth highest per capita funding in the country. Saskatchewan is the lowest at $27 per capita. We're at $61 per capita. And I'm pleased to table charts that show these facts as opposed to the fiction you heard from across the floor earlier. Like the universities, the community colleges face cost pressures, and we recognize those costs. The community college provides excellent education and training opportunities for Nova Scotians. It's a key player in helping our people develop the skills they need to contribute to our economy. In fact, the college stakes its reputation on the ability of its graduates to find fulfilling jobs in their fields of study. A recent study by the Maritime Provinces Higher Education Commission showed similar results for university graduates. It noted that they largely saw their education, regardless of the cost, as an investment in their future. If students need loans to complete their college or university education, they have access to Canada and Nova Scotia student loans. Recent federal announcements are encouraging that even more students will have access to this financing. And I'm very pleased to say, Mr. Speaker, that we played a role in bringing that request forward through the Council of Education Ministers in this country. And let's not forget that provincial governments pay the interest on these loans while students are in schools, so they graduate with owing only the principal. We also pay the interest for graduates who are having trouble with repayment. Mr. Speaker, students with Nova Scotia student loans now have access to our new student rebate reduction program when they graduate. It's a $5.1 million program designed to help the students with the highest debt with repayment. Depending on the length of their programs, students can have about 40% of the loan eliminated as they start repayment. As Education Minister, I announced the new student debt reduction program last March. At that time, I promised that we'd develop an information campaign to be sure students knew about it. I also promised to ask student leaders for their thoughts on the best ways to get this information to students. And Minister Muir has honored these commitments. He met with the student leaders in the fall and got their input on the best way to reach graduating students. Government has limited resources for this campaign. However, the Department of Education has placed ads in student and provincial papers. It's mailed notices to every student whose records show may be graduating each month. And it followed up with emails to every student for whom it had an address. The department is also working with an automated system to make the application process easier. Mr. Speaker, we hope that every student who is eligible for the program will apply. The money is available to reduce student debt, and we want them to take full advantage of it. I'm sure I could speak much longer on the efforts of the government that we are making to support students and maintain a high-quality secondary education system. However, I believe that we've given members opposite sufficient evidence to dispose the claim of this resolution. And I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Recognize the honourable member for Kings West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This topic is certainly one which is very personal and also related to my profession for many years. First of all, I must say, however, that the attendance by student leaders here today in the midst of their exams certainly points towards many difficulties with the tuition structure that we now have in the province. I don't think we need a complicated formula or the poorly constructed grade 12 math exam to see an obvious equation here. High tuition, students not entering university, students leaving before their programs are complete, and students leaving the province. That is an equation that is simply now working itself here in Nova Scotia. The starting point for this spring, of course, is that we do have, at the university level, the highest tuition rates in the country. And obviously, from what we have heard so far, those rates continue to accelerate. 7.2% at Dalhousie, 4.25 at St. Mary's, and we hear the other universities will be following suit. If we take a look at just the last 5 years in terms of tuition increases, we are now floating somewhere between 20 and 25% of the total cost of a university education has increased in just the past 5 years. That certainly is a very, very substantial increase, and the impact on students and student life, Mr. Speaker, is certainly now being exhibited on campuses. We know that students and a growing again percentage are having to use food banks, are having to get a line of credit to pay for their pay the rent. These are stresses in the midst of university life that I don't think should be acceptable. One of the realities that I experienced as a high school vice principal was in rural Nova Scotia, was students coming into my office discussing their future, and again, the whole mentality of large loans, investing in future is foreign to some families to do. And I think if tuition rates and certainly easier access to loans and a strong debt reduction program, I absolutely believe that we would have more Nova Scotians of ability entering our post-secondary institutions. So this whole area, of course, also brings up the fact that we haven't had the support on the capital side to our universities. And when we met with the presidents, they said at the current rate of monies they have available to renew and restore the campuses, they are talking about a 200-year cycle. Well, we obviously know that many of their buildings, won't be around, for that kind of period of time if they aren't able to renew those. So what we see happening is those kinds of stresses on the university are in fact leading to significant increases in tuition. We certainly, all of us here, I'm sure in the legislature, would speak very proudly of the fact that we do have the best undergraduate universities in the country. And I think that's borne out in many ways. And certainly to keep that stature and status is one we want. But there's a price to pay. So hiring university professors that again are accomplished in their field is an expense that is starting to be borne more by students. And in my view, again, our students should not have to pay for this right. When we take a look at the great benefits our universities bring to this province, certainly, again, government should be there to lend a hand through this tough period that our university students are experiencing to a greater degree than what we currently see. One of those realities of high tuition was borne out for me today when I was attending a function this morning at the College of Geographic Sciences in Lawrencetown, and a young girl stepped to the podium and she said, "I've had 5 years at a university in Nova Scotia and now a 1-year GIS program at Lawrencetown, and in 6 months' time I will have to start to pay back $70,000. 55 from student loan and 15 in a line of credit. Now that's probably on the high side, but more and more of our students are having to move into paying off these exorbitant debts. And what that's leading to, of course, is very, very talented Nova Scotians who should be the future and backbone of the economy and driving forces in the communities for the future, but they're having to make a quick exit out of Nova Scotia because they have to get a job that can pay considerable dollars immediately upon leaving university. That particular student that I just referenced, she told me this morning that she'll be paying back somewhere between $600 and $800 a month. So she has to look outside of Nova Scotia. So there is a real connect here with rising tuition fees, with students not entering, whether it's to community colleges or universities, simply finding it too burdensome to take on the kind of debt that their families are certainly not accustomed to. And as we know, we need our students to remain in the province, and that's why that our party had committed to an exit plan that would work to keep more young Nova Scotians in the province by giving them debt relief and larger significance amounts if they remained in Nova Scotia. So we are once again in that rite of spring where we're seeing tuitions go up, and certainly it is our hope that the budget will not be too devastating for universities, which in turn we know the pattern now is to pass it on to students. About 50% roughly of university funding comes from tuition, so we know that this tremendous connect does exist, and it's one that certainly students are going to make us even much more aware of in the coming days. We will see students, I'm sure, back here in the House to tell us their personal stories of what they have been living through for the past 4 or 5 years. We know that education is obviously an essential to the future of Nova Scotia, and we must commit to making sure that it is accessible to all families in this province. It can no longer be the birthright of well-to-do, elite families. I think we will pay an enormous price in the future if we become known for having only had the doors of universities for those who were able to sustain significant debt or able to fund and provide the means of going to college. It is something that certainly our generation felt that we had great access to. So with that, Mr. Speaker, I will wrap up this period of time by saying that certainly it is of great concern to those in the system and to future students of Nova Scotia. Thank you. Thank you.
Time allotted for late debate has expired. I'd like to thank the honourable members for taking part in this debate. We are adjourned until 9 a.m.